I'm Troy Thompson. Over the last 15 years, our family has worked hard to create a place we call the center of the universe. A place where our kids and someday our grandkids can come home to and laugh, have fun, learn how to work, pray, worship God, and be a place to celebrate life with all our friends. After a quarter century in uniform, I put away one set of boots for another, working on our acreage, improving the land, fixing some structures, and building new ones. We say, give back to the community, be useful, keep your hands calloused, and spread the gospel. This is a little place in a little state right in the middle of flyover country, from which cries out a voice in the wilderness to all who might want to listen, learn, and laugh along with us. This is our American dream. Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to Sunnyside. Now, I have to tell you that today is, besides tax day, because it's April 15th, we're not talking about taxes. I thought I would do that, but I'm not going to do that because I'd much rather spend my time with you, the listener, talking to people, as you know, that are interesting and are following pursuits that make them happy. And that is something that, well, we've been doing for quite a while here at the Sunny Side of Life. And friends, I found a guy who's been around for a while, but if you ask the birthday situation, and I'm sure he'll tell you, he hasn't been around that long at all, but he's got lots of experiences from dancing to writing both plays and musicals and short stories and books and screenplays and you name it, a prolific performer, producer, all-around talented and creative guy, and the person who brings just a spark of joy into everybody's life to whom he speaks. Ladies and gentlemen, Cy Young. Hey, Cy, how are you?
Wow, what an introduction. I don't know if I'm going to come up to that or not. I'll do the best I can.
Well, I didn't write that down or anything. So
well, that's good. That's great. I'm glad you could do that all the time. You can call me every day and do that.
Oh, get you fired up that way.
Yeah. Well, you've got some great credits yourself. I was just checking them out again, and I know you write with your Donovan guy.
Yeah,
and that's
Johnson.
Great. You've been writing ever since high school. That's a great team.
Yeah, well, we have we took some breaks there. He went off and became a renowned pianist and performer himself, and
really?
did lots of great things. Oh yeah, he played at Carnegie Hall, and he did a little trip over there to Europe and fun stuff like that. He's got lots of great stories. Performed all over the Midwest, lots of different bands. Yeah, very
great.
Talented. Much, but no, I mean, look, you're in that boat and have been for quite some time. How do you even say how old you are? Or do you just go by your birthday?
Sure, I'm 92 basically, but I always say I'm 20. I'm 23 because I've only had 23 birthdays. I'm a leap year guy. From just myself and Elizabeth Taylor were born within 5 minutes of each other. So
is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny. When I was 16, I was a really cute guy, and I wrote her a letter. I thought she was really cute. I said, I think you're wonderful, Elizabeth, and I hope you write me back. And she did. She said, hi, Cy. I would hate to think that I'm not a nice person. And so she wrote me the letter. I wish I had the letter. I don't have it.
Right.
But it was a little incident in my life when I was 16. So there you go.
But did you ever meet her in person?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not meet her. I was mostly in New York. I was in California. I was just writing down that my first job was with a group of dancers who danced at the hotel in Chicago.
Right.
And we were hired to open the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Los Angeles. And there were 2 guys and six girls, and that's how I got my start. Then I came back to Chicago and worked at the Empire Room of the Palmer House for about six or 8 months, and it was great because I had my room at the Palmer House, and I could get easy meals and stuff like that. It was really terrific.
That's
and
amazing. Yeah, you said six female dancers and 2 male dancers. You like the odds?
Yeah, two male, and one was gay, and I was not.
So you,
So there
those,
were six ladies there, and it was quite thrilling for me.
that's good math, right?
I enjoyed it very much, and but anyway, I was working there, and it was great, fortuitous, because this show came to town, Pajama Game. Was a big hit on Broadway,
Yeah.
and it was a big number by Bob Fosse called Steam Heat, and it opened Act Two, and there were three dancers, and Fosse always got the right dancers that he wanted for it, and it was touring. This is a touring company with Fran Warren, who was a big star at that time, and I don't rock stuff, and I don't know, she did all kinds of stuff, but she was starring in that show, and so they being a Fran and a bunch of people from the show, the chorus people, came to the hotel to see the show, and they saw me dance, and they came up afterwards, a couple of them, and said, Si, one of the guys is leaving the Steam Heat number. There are two guys and one gal, and we wanted to see if you'd like to come and audition for it. And I said, absolutely. So the next day I went down there and I auditioned for it, and I was in pretty good shape at that time because I was dancing all the time. I'd get up in the morning, I'd go out and we'd rehearse, go downstairs, we'd rehearse in the ballroom. It was great. And so then they had me audition, and I was really good. So they hired me. And so I worked on the show, and I left the show I was doing at the Palmer House, and I was getting, I opened the show, and there was all kinds of publicity and everything. And Bob Fosse came to see the show, and he was really upset because he wanted to hire a guy from New York, and he didn't think anybody from Chicago would be any good. Well, I studied with a group, a company, a couple of people there called Stone Cameron, who were ballet, who were really good. And I had studied with them only a couple of years. But anyway, I was in pretty good shape. And so Fosse couldn't get rid of me because I was too good. So I joined that company and doing the Steam Heat number. And we were out for a year. It was terrific. I didn't make much money. What did I make? $175 or something like that. The road, believe it or not.
Was that so? But, help us put that in a time frame. Bob Fosse came out.
I think that was in 1957, 58.
Okay,
believe it or not.
Right. So he did the Pajama Game, in 54, and then. But then he continued with all of these things: Damn Yankees, 55, How to Succeed in Business Without Trying, Sweet Charity, Pippin, Chicago later on, and then directed some films on as well. Wow! And so you had to you got to keep your job because you were good at dancing. But what's funny in your bio, he says, my mom took me to take some dancing lessons when I was 4, but I didn't want anything to do with it. And then you were 21.
Kicked myself for that. If I had, I'd have been a much better dancer all the time. But that's okay. Yeah. I caught up with everything, and I studied dancing when I was tap dancing when I was at Northwestern. There was a gal who I met somewhere, and she had a little dance studio out in South Chicago, and I started working there and developing myself there at that little tap dancing, and I was also doing some acrobatics, which was a good idea because in the Steam Heat number, I had to do a nip up. You know what that is?
No, I have no idea.
Well, we would run and slide and work back on our shoulders, and then they would do a jump. You jump up from the floor. Mm-hmm. You kick up and you land up. You see Gene Kelly do it all the time in his in the movies he did, and Donald O'Connor did it. Anyway, so so I did that, and it was really kind of interesting. And I was out for a whole year, and so it was and so I got to New York, I think my late 20s, and it was kind of late to get there, but it's interesting, I was so thrilled to be out of a small town. Well, I thought of Kansas City, that's where was brought up as a small town.
Wow!
But when I got to New York, I went down to Park Avenue. 57th and Park Avenue. Mm-hmm. I looked south, and nothing but buildings. I looked north, there's nothing but buildings. And I said to myself, I'm home. I just loved it. It was great. It's not the same anymore.
New York in the 50s as a dancer performer. Wow, that's pretty exciting. I mean,
it was great, Troy. Yeah, it was really great.
And that was the time too, the 50s and into the mid 60s that there was those stage shows had just enormous dance numbers. I mean, that was the style.
Yeah.
And they became many of them became movies, and they did the same thing with enormous and incredible dance numbers, which I would say, we don't see that in film as much today as in that period.
It's funny, I just talked to a gal at Equity, and I said, "How's Broadway doing?" And she said, "Well, not too well." She said they'll have a show that will open, and it does very well for a couple of weeks, and then it goes downhill. And it's probably because of the medical thing that happened, and I don't know. It's a lot of things are different. But Joy, it's interesting that after I got to New York, I did. The first thing I did was we did Steam Heat at City Center, and I was there. I did that, so that was right. That was a good introduction for me for New York. But I didn't dance much after that. I did mostly performing, which is what I wanted to do. Okay. I would sing and perform, and I performed at a club called the Upstairs, the Downstairs, for 3 or 4 years. It was a club downstairs. They had a little tiny stage and a little tiny stage upstairs, and you could do a show downstairs or upstairs. And I was at the show downstairs, and it was great because I sang. Sometimes I'd sing 60, 70, 80, 100 songs a day.
Wow!
Because people would use me for auditions, as well as then I do 2 shows a night at the club, at the upstairs, downstairs, and so it was great, and I enjoyed that because a lot of people, in fact, everybody in New York came to see that show. So I knew everybody knew me, and it was really, I was kind of, I had a guy contact me, send me a letter, and he said, "You were a big star then." I said, "I was," because I wasn't aware of being a star. I was being aware that I was a singer, and I was working as a singer.
Right.
And it was really great.
If you're singing 100 songs a day, how are you keeping your voice?
Well, because of the training, because my voice was very well placed.
Okay, sure.
The people who have trouble with their voice, Troy, is that when they don't have a correct a presentation in their vocal area, and so I was always able to do that, and I didn't strain. I had no straining, so I was always good. It was a matter of breath. And I had the breath because I was a dancer. I had been a dancer, and I was still working out. And I kept the physical thing going. In fact, I still do it. I still work out now. I'm doing right now. I'm doing something called dynamic tension. There was a guy named George F. Jowett when I was a kid, and he was touting that, where you use your hands and everything. You resist and everything. You pull up, but basically push-ups are the best workout, and I'm doubling that. I want to do about 25 of those every day. So
nice.
I mean times. So anyway, that's kind of a jump, but that's.
Well, I spent 26 years in the Army, and I can tell you that the push-up thing for me, it was a little overrated. But
oh yeah, you get tired of that, right?
Yeah. Well, so you in New York though, you also. Well, I'm going to jump back here because did you train in voice? Did you sing at Northwestern and while you're in college, or what did you go to school for?
I did. I minored in music, and I met a guy. It's really interesting. I met a guy when I was a sophomore named Lloyd Norlin. He was a cute little guy. He was about 5'3", and this guy had been a tail gunner on a B-19 in World War II.
Wow!
Because he was small, but he knew he was a writer. And he knew a lot of people at Northwestern. So I started working with Lloyd, and I got to the point where I could write songs. And so I wrote 3 songs for a show they called Wah Mew, which was a show they had every year. And they had 3 of my songs in there. One was Mr. Spring, you're overdue. And it was really a cute song. And then I wrote a ballad, and then I wrote an upbeat kind of performing song. And so I got started that way. And it's interesting because it's the same university that Sheldon Harnick went to. And he was the guy who wrote, he wrote a bunch of shows on Broadway. He wrote Fiddler on the Roof and got kind of, all kinds of awards for that. But he was at Northwestern before me. And he did some also at WAMU. He did a song called Chicago. Chicago, Chicago. That's the city of opportunity, grand. It was really cute song. He was a very funny guy, very funny writer.
Wow.
But anyway, yeah. So
I
did a lot of singing in New York. It was really great, and my voice never wore out.
That is amazing. That's really impressive. But when you said that, you say, well, it's about your posture and how you hold yourself and your breathing. And when you said that, it made me sit up straighter.
Well, it will do that to you because it's so easy to slouch over, And I have been having a problem with my neck lately, so I've been doing exercises to counter that, metaphysical and also physical. And it's important to keep yourself up. Enjoy. That's one of the important things you got to do as you mature, and not accept all the baloney that's coming at you about, well, you're this, you're that, and you really make up what you are. You can, what the thoughts you think and how you define yourself is basically how you are. It's like who was it said you are what you think. That sort of thing. If you think you can do it, you can. If you think you can't do it, you won't do it. And anyway, that's an important statement.
I had a choir director when I was in college named John Williams, not the guy who wrote all of the the soundtracks for movies, but a guy named John Williams, and he would always he was a big, like, real trained operatic bass, and he would just constantly remind us that about breathing and using the diaphragm. And he says, if you ever look at the big opera stars, you just watch their stomach and they're just moving in and out, and they're able to hit all of these notes and carry these long notes for a long time. Is that something that I'm sure you found?
Oh yeah. But then my son is a brilliant singer. He's got one of the greatest voices I've ever heard. And he said, I'm breathing wrong. My diaphragm breathing is wrong. So I've been retraining myself to lift my diaphragm up a little bit higher.
Right.
But yeah, that's really important, how you support yourself. But it's really important to have a strong support in your gut when you sing.
Absolutely.
And that's important.
Now, when you
I was talking at the upstairs about the upstairs and the downstairs.
Yeah.
That was the center of my life for many years. And I met a lot of people there. I worked with Burt Lahr on Broadway in a show called Boys Against the Girls.
Okay.
Or Girls Against the Boys.
Wasn't Dick Van Dyke in that show too, though?
Dick Van Dyke was in that show.
Oh,
he did a number that he had done in an act where he was coming home at night and he's really drunk. When his wife comes up, he's suddenly sober. His wife comes in, he's very suddenly sober. And then she leaves and he goes back to being drunk again. And it was very good. He was very strong. That the show didn't run very long. It ran, probably a month or so. But Burt Lahr.
Yeah, he was the cowardly lion in The Wizard of Oz we've all seen.
Oh, of course he was, yeah. And Burt Lahr did a show with on the road. At the same time I was on the road with Buster in Once Upon a Mattress. And we met each other we were both playing in some town in the Midwest. And Buster got together with him, and I was honored to be able to go with them to the after the show. And he and Buster were sitting and talking. And it was interesting because
now when you say
there was
Buster,
a young man there.
You're talking about Buster Keaton.
Buster Keaton. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Buster Keaton. And we were in Once Upon a Mattress together.
Legend.
I'm going to talk more about Buster Keaton.
Great.
He's just an incredible guy. Once Upon a Mattress with Buster. And we were in a town in the Midwest, and Burt Lahr was in some show. I don't know what it was. We were after the show. We were sitting there having a sandwich or something. And there was a young man there. This is always impressed me very, very strongly. There was a young man there who was very, very sweet. He was probably 23 or 4, and he was working for the local paper. and he was sent to interview Bert Lahr. And Bert Lahr was so nasty to him. He was like, "Who do you think you are?" He just put him down all the way. And I think probably Lahr did that because was used to being knocked around by critics and all that sort of thing. But that's always stayed with me, how nasty he was. And Buster was never like that. Buster was always the sweetest guy in the world. We'll get to that pretty soon, too. Oh, I got to tell you one thing about Bert Lahr.
Yeah.
He did a sketch on Broadway, a bit on Broadway, which was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. It was a thing where he was playing, I don't know, in the 1890s or something, and the guys were out there in this country thing in a cabin, and suddenly an animal came running in and scared him. He ran down to the right stage,
yeah.
And then he went right up the side. I mean, actually went up all the way. Funny, the way they did that. Of course, they had an elevator or something on the right side, and he stepped on that, and he looked like he was climbing it. And I tell you, it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. It stopped the show for about 10 minutes. It was really great. That was Bert Lahr. And another thing, he just opened at a show. I heard this about him. He just opened at a show, and a very popular, it was a big hit and everything. And then somebody said to him, "Oh, Bert, this is great." He said, "Yeah, but what am I going to do when this closes?" Because he was always, he had a great fear of not working, I guess.
Hello, friends and neighbors. Do you have a dog? We do. His name is Knox, and he's a German Shepherd. We welcome Knox to our family as a puppy. He's about 90 pounds now. What we feed Knox is almost as important as what we feed ourselves. So, we buy our kibble from Munster Milling Company, spelled just like the cheese, Muenster. They're a fourth-generation family-owned and operated animal food manufacturer located in Munster, Texas, since 1932. Munster Milling follows a strict code of ethics, having created one of the first all-natural pet food diets in the country. Their ingredients are sourced as locally as possible, so they can verify exactly what goes into Knox's tummy. They test their products, making sure their innovative extruded animal food allows for maximum availability and absorption of nutrients, so Knox can perform optimally and live a healthier life. I trust Munster because they believe we should feed Knox with the same care and compassion as we would any other member of our family. And all the Munster recipes are formulated by PhD animal nutritionists, whether it's their awesome kibble, mixers, or treats. And since every dog is special, Munster can customize your order specifically suited to your dog's dietary needs with amazing enhancements such as salmon oil, probiotics, beef bone broth, bacon fat, MCT oil, dried salmon, goat's milk, dried liver, dried cheese, freeze-dried beef, elk, or chicken. Ingredients that your dog will just love and will help support their immune system, digestion, skin health, and shiny coats. I like Munster Milling Company for its customer service. They even send a nice little note with each delivery. And I can set my deliveries so they fit our schedule. Knox likes Munster for the taste. Maybe it's time for you to switch to Munster Milling Company too. Just click on the link in the show notes to get started and share the sunny side of life with your dog, just like Knox. Oh, and did I mention they have cat food too? Don't even get me started on that. Edith and Edie love Munster too. Go to the show notes, click on the link, and get started. Now, back to the show.
Back to the upstairs to the downstairs.
Right. Carol
Burnett came to see the show, and I liked Carol Burnett very much.
Yeah, I do too.
And I did some really stupid things, Troy, in my life, and they're just things I should have done I didn't do. And afterwards, after the show, Carol Burnett came up to me and she said, "Cy, I liked everything that you did. Call me." You gave me your phone number.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? I never called her.
Oh my gosh, Cy.
Do you believe that? How stupid that was?
Oh my gosh.
I know.
She was a
and
gem.
you know, I was ran in the family because my wife, Jane Manning, was co-starring in a show called Love Is a Many Splintered Thing on television. Mm-hmm. And Joan Crawford, she was living there. She was retired. She was living at the hotel close by. And Jane was getting her hair done at the plaza. And Joan Crawford sent her a note saying, "Jane, I just love your work on Love Is a Many Splintered Thing. Call me." and Jane never called her. So it ran in the family. I don't know what our problem was, but it was still a silly kind of thing when you have an opportunity like that.
Yeah.
You don't take advantage of it, and it just you kick yourself later on and say, "What was I thinking of, you silly guy?"
Oh, well.
But anyway,
yeah, that Carol Burnett. I mean, I still will occasionally, scroll through YouTube and just watch some of those sketches that she did on her show, and watching Tim Conway and Harvey Korman break up. It's so hilarious, the fun that they had on that show, for sure.
Yeah, they are great. And I thought, and when I think about Carol, I think, and I could have been one of those guys.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't do it, so.
But
there you go. I did other things, Troy.
Yeah.
I did other stuff.
You went off to London. I know that. Yeah, you did.
Well, I did go to London. Yeah, I did a show. I did a couple of shows. I did a show pretty soon getting to New York. I think it was before I started doing the upstairs, downstairs. I was at the Cherry Lane Theater, a wonderful little theater down off Broadway. And they were doing a company of The Boyfriend, which was a big hit on Broadway about 10 years earlier. And they were doing it as an off-Broadway show. And I played several parts in that. So I could go down there and work on that, work in that show. And so there were the director was a guy named Gus Shermer. He was the son of the big Shermer publishing people. And he became a producer in New York. And then he produced, so Gus, a few months after that, Gus produced a show called Diversions, which was in a small theater off Broadway. And that was a very, very interesting gig for me because it was directed by a guy named Stephen Dinaver. He was developing a very good name. So there's another story with that. Let me go back to when I was doing Diversions. It was, people always would come and see me, and this guy came with his partner, and he said, "Hi, I love your work. I'd like you to work with me." And I said, "Okay, who are you?" He said, "I'm Fred Ebb." And I don't know if you know who Fred Ebb was. Fred Ebb was the biggest, most successful guy in New York because he wrote something called Chicago.
Yeah.
Longest running musical in history. He also wrote, "I'm packing my shoes. I'm leaving today." He wrote that.
Really?
And that was, a song that he just broke all the records.
Yeah.
And Fred always said, I gotta stay in New York. I gotta do it the right way. And he did. And he was he saw me at this show Diversions. Now I'm still with Diversions. The guy who directed Diversions, I had just done a show that I wanted to do that was off Broadway that I was supposed to do with the director of a BMI group called it used to be BMI Workshop, Lehman Engel. And Lehman and I were supposed to do this show together, but because of certain inducements by someone in my life, I didn't do it. And I hired somebody else who killed the show. It ran one night and it just killed me. And my back was out and I was really in bad shape. And I went home to Kansas City to lick my wounds.
Mm-hmm.
While I'm in Kansas City, I get a call from Stephen Dinaver in London. He said, "Si, do you tap dance?" I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Well, I got a job for you." I said, "I want you to come to London and co-star or star in Divorce Me Darling at the Globe." I said, "Okay."
Yeah, that's easy. Wow.
But my back was in really bad shape. And so I got to London and talked to Stephen and everything. And then my wife and I were in a cab. We were going to a hotel. At that time, you could only stay in a hotel 2 or 3 days. You had to get out. They wanted somebody else to come in and take your place. Anyway,
I wonder why they did that.
Huh?
I wonder why they did that. Like, what's the
I
difference?
don't know.
If you're paying your bill, who cares how long you stay there?
Pretty stupid. Yeah. I had some problems with some of the people that like the cops. Some of the policemen didn't like me very much. But anyway, so I'm in this cab,
Yeah.
and my back was really hurting, and so I was sitting on the edge of the seat. And we get to our address, and the guy slams on the brakes, and boom, I'm on the floor in pain and spasm. And they took me into our room, and I was on my back about a month. But they kept me as the performer because they didn't have anybody who could do the part. So finally, I got my back in shape, and it was a little bit at a time, but finally I was okay, and I opened the show and got really good reviews. It was really great. A lot of people came to see it. Who Mel Torme was.
Yes.
Mel Torme came to see the
Frog.
show. Yeah, the Velvet Fog. Yeah. Well, I have a story about Mel. I always just loved his work. I thought he was terrific.
Yes.
But anyway, he came to see the show. He came to see Divorce Me, Darling, as did Noel Coward. All the stars were there. And but he didn't come up to see me. But somebody told me, they said, Mel Torme was in the audience, and he said, that's Cy Young. He said, he knocked me out. He was great. And I said, well, why didn't he come up and tell me that? So anyway, cut to New York City about 3 or 4 months later. I'm walking down Broadway in the summer, like in August or something. And on the right, there's an open air cafe. And who's sitting in there but Mel Torme?
Really?
So I went up and I said, Mr. Torme, my name is Cy Young. You saw me in Divorce Me, Darling in London. You didn't come up to say anything to me. He said, oh, I'm sorry. He said, yeah, you were great. He was right there. And he had a paunch then. He was getting a little heavy,
Yeah.
But he was great. He was really great. So anyway, that's an interesting story. I have a lot of interesting stories with interesting people.
Well, so you talk about the good reviews. Did you ever get any bad reviews?
The only bad review I ever got was at the upstairs and downstairs from a guy who worked for AGVA, which was the union, AGVA, and he gave me a bad review because I didn't sign up with him, or I didn't give him money, and he was mad at me. And it's the same guy that my wife. He followed my wife on stage when she was doing a review because he wanted the money. They're really, really bad news people, but I don't think they're around anymore. It was a union for nightclubs.
Oh, really?
I think it was called AGVA.
Wow.
But he did that on purpose. He nailed me on purpose. I always got great reviews in everything I did. And I never had a bad review in reality.
Yeah, because you mentioned Burt Lahr, like he didn't particularly like reporters because he had gotten poor reviews or at some point, and he didn't like that. But you were lucky. That's right. Yeah, he did. But that's all. That's the way the business is. Oh, I got a review of my book. Eventually, I want to get to talking about my kicker books. But I got a review from a woman. I'm going to take it out and I'm going to keep it, and I'm going to put it up on when I become more famous. I'm going to put it up everywhere. And she said, "This is the worst book I've ever seen." He said, "A 10-year-old could write this." And she went off on me. It was hilarious how horrible she thought the book was. And I don't know what, some people are not like that. You'll have people who just rave about your book, and then somebody will come and say, "This is a piece of garbage." So who knows? Who knows why people do that sort of thing? But they do. I'm not sure if I would pay any attention to reviews. Reviews are supposed to be helpful for whatever system that they use for podcasts and Apple and all of that stuff. So we encourage people to leave reviews. You want them to leave good reviews, and if you don't want to leave a good review, then just don't leave a review. That'd be all right.
That's the way it works. It's up and it's down. It's weird. It's a weird business, and it depends upon your individual's personality. To whether they like you or not.
So what period put a date to it, I guess, and when you were working with Buster Keaton?
Buster was in the early 60s, probably 60, 62. It was with Dodie Goodman. Do you remember her?
No, but I'm going to look that up.
Anyway, Dodie she was doing television and stuff, and she could barely sing, but they wanted a star, so they got her to play the part of that Carol Burnett did off Broadway very successfully. And I think Dodie was probably very kind of upset and concerned about the fact that she did not have a good voice and she wasn't a very strong performer. So when I did the show with her, and she didn't like me because I was always getting laughs, and when I shouldn't have. And we had one scene where I was downstage right, everybody was on stage, and Dodie was downstage left. My direction was to cross over to her very slowly, And so I did it, and I had a subtext. I had a subtext. I was very, very vibrant with my subtext, very quiet. I didn't say anything, but I had the look on my face. And as I'm doing this cross, the audience starts laughing. I got laughs, and I finally got to Dodie, and then boom, it took off. And she didn't want me doing that anymore. So she complained bitterly about me doing that.
Well, she had a very unique voice. I mean, you said it's probably not a very good singing voice, but she had a kind of a unique character type voice.
Yeah. And then I also had a gal who was doing the steam heat number, and she really didn't like me because I think she was probably used to having guys who were not very, in some ways, very strong. And I was, I asserted myself, and I said, no, I'm not doing it that way, and blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to get too personal with it, but it was, that did happen a lot in the theater in those days, and probably still is.
Yeah.
I think you just have to do the best you can and try to be friendly if possible.
Hi, this is Scott Bertelson. I was a public education instructor at Forest City High School for 39/40 Hooks Counting years. And during that time, I learned a lot about myself and life, as I still am now in my retirement. That's why I am hosting Mr. B's Dinner Party on this podcast platform. And I hope that you will join me at the dinner table for conversational morsels for the mind. Now, you may be wondering what that is. Well, you'll have to tune in to find out. But let me guarantee you, you will leave my dinner table feeling full and feeling satisfied.
Join Mr. B's Dinner Party from Sunnyside Farm Studios every other Wednesday, premiering August 23rd, 2023.
Hope that you will join me for Mr. B's Dinner Party on this platform.
You didn't stop there. You went on to do. You were a producer with F. Lee Bailey's show, Lie Detector.
Yeah, that was in California, but that was later. That was later when I did. Before that, I had some very interesting things opportunities that I had.
Yeah.
After I had done my show that only ran one night, an agent liked me and liked my work and said, "Si, why don't you come up with 6 ideas and then pitch them to me, and then I'll tell you which one I like, and you can write that as a book." Well, I did that, and a couple of days later, I came up with 6 ideas, and I had one show called Doris. And Doris was about a guy who was a magazine review writer, who has his boss wants him to go to interview or to try to go to see this meeting they're having at a big hotel on 8th Avenue, in a hotel there, a big show about women. And at that point, it was a very big thing to have these women's groups, and they were all very, very hostile to men. And so he got this assignment, so he goes down there and he can't get in. So he hurries down to a place and buys some female clothes and dresses up, and he goes back and he gets in as a woman. He goes into this big meeting with all these radical women, with radical women's groups like Betty Friedan, all people like that.
Oh yeah.
And then while they're in this meeting, the husband of one of the women is a fireman, and he hates what they're doing. So he gets his guys together in a room next to them and gets this fire hose that he operates. In the middle of their meeting, he breaks in with the fire hose and sprays them all over.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And breaks it up. Great scene. Great scene.
Oh, that
Well,
is
the
a great
cops
scene.
come, of course.
Yeah.
The cops come and they arrest everybody, and they arrest Lant, this guy who's dressed up as a woman, and they put him in the jail for a while.
Mhm.
And Lant gets to know this woman who is very beautiful and everything, and she's the head of this one organization, and he becomes a friend of hers and starts working in the organization. And he tells his boss, he says, "Boss, that's great, stay with it." He said, "I don't want to be a woman." He said, "You got to do it." So this reporter does, and the whole story is about him. And this was, of course, before Tootsie, and I think that they probably Tootsie got some of my stuff from that. But anyway, it was a very, very good show. So I looked up the timeline of movies about like that. And in 1948, there was a movie called Where's Charlie? Do you remember that with Ray Bolger, wonderful dancer before he did A Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Then
Okay.
in 1959, there was Some Like It Hot. 11 years later,
Right.
with Marilyn Monroe and
Seen
Tony
that.
Curtis and Jack Lemmon.
Yeah.
And then 1970 would have been my show, Doris, and because 1980 was Tootsie. So you see how that was. Every 10 or 11 or 12 years, they had a show like that with a guy dressing up as a woman.
Yeah.
So I was perfect in my timing, but I didn't
Now they
have
have it all
enough
the time.
smarts to do it.
You've done a tremendous amount of wonderful stories and name dropping of amazing characters and just personalities and performers. But we have left at least one out, Barbara Streisand.
Oh, Barbara Streisand.
Yeah.
Well, she came to the upstairs and the downstairs, another one. So she came to see the show, and we just said hello and everything. After I did the show that ran one night that I had worked on for like 3 months, I'd written all the score for it, and I was all in anticipation of having a good show. It didn't work out that way, but anyway, I had just written like 15 songs for that show called That Hat, and I had this wonderful apartment on Park on not Park Avenue on 57th Street, the most famous street and the wealthiest street in the world. And I had I had a view of the Empire State Building. I thought, oh, I made it, boy, I made it. This is great. And anyway, so I finished the score. I was living there by myself. I wasn't married anymore, and I just finished the score, and I was very. When I write, I try to be as open as I can to write ideas, to spiritual thoughts, and whatever comes to me, not just spiritual, but all the ideas that come to anybody who's a real writer will say, I didn't write that. I don't know where it came from. Well, it comes from a power greater than you, buddy. It comes from a power of inspiration, and the inspiration is always there.
Hello, friends and neighbors. This is Troy Thompson of the Sunny Side of Life. Let's spend this year together reading the Word of God. Just take 10 to 15 minutes a day to join with me in the Sunny Side of Life's Bible in a Year experience. It may be just what you need. Lord knows I do. Besides, it's free, it's fast, and it's good for your soul. And you can start anytime. It doesn't take much to get caught up and on pace with us each day. So, whether you've read the Bible entirely already or you're just looking for a way to get it done, take a few moments with me here and let the good book be the sunny side of your life each and every day.
Well, I was very inspired after writing all these songs. And so I sat down on my piano. I was just sitting there. And I started doodling a little figure that went da 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 da, and the words came out. Draw me up. And I started singing the song, and the thing wrote itself in 5 minutes. You believe that? It was incredible. And I wrote the song, and I thought, this is really a great song. And I played it for a couple of people, and they agreed with me. Well, a couple of weeks later, Barbara Streisand was in town looking for material for her album, for her third album. And I heard about it, and I showed up. And there were about, I'd say, 10 or 12 writers there. And we all, at the piano, Barbara was sitting there, and we all did like 2 or 3 songs for her. And I got up and I did a couple of songs, and then I did Draw Me a Circle. And she said, I love that song. That's great. And she said, I want Marty Ehrlichman, who's her manager. She said, Marty Ehrlichman, I'm going to have him contact you, and I want to do that song. So I said, great. Well, 3 or 4 months later, I still hadn't heard from Marty Ehrlichman. So unfortunately, I was at that time I had met a gal, and I was getting married. In fact, I got married, and she knew a guy named Moose Charlap, who had written some songs for some famous Broadway shows. And he had a wife who was a singer, Sandy Stewart. And they said, well, we love that song. Why don't you let Sandy record it? And I said, well, Barbara said she was going to record it. They said, well, let us do it. And I played the song for them. They said, that's a great song. And the publisher just went ape for it because he knew he could make some money on it. And I, like a fool, didn't know that publishing is half of the money that you make on it. Mm-hmm. So I let him publish it, and I let Sandy record it. And when finally her manager came back and signed me, and she said, well, I wanted to do that as a single. I won't do it as a single now, but I'm going to record it and put it on my album and to use it to open one of my specials for it, which she did, which is very exciting. She used it to open a special. But she didn't, and she put it on her album, which is great, recorded it, but she didn't do the single. And I killed myself. I could have made thousands of dollars. That's another big mistake I made. So that's 3. You get to slap me 3 times.
Wow. You live and you learn. That her third album, that's what it was called, the third album.
The third album, yeah. And you can listen to it. It's on my website, or you can just go to Amazon and just draw me a circle, draw Barbara Streisand. You can hear it, And it's really interesting how these things happen. I was doing that in New York mostly, and then I decided to go to the West Coast, and I was there for a while. And that's when I did the F. Lee Bailey segment producer. And that was very interesting because we got some very interesting people. And I got a very, very important deal to produce. And it was Charles Starkweather, who was a serial killer. And he had taken his girlfriend with him. And they had gone on a killing spree. And finally, when they were captured, and his girlfriend went to prison for about 20 years, and she came on the show that I produced, and she to take a lie detector test to prove that she was innocent, and she basically was. Her name was Carol Fugate, and she was very nice, and we talked and everything, and she took a lie detector test and passed it.
Because you were obviously, we know at this point you're writing some songs. You've got, you're working in theater and doing all kinds of wonderful things, working, but you're also writing. And so at some point you create some play or plays.
I wrote 3 plays and got them published, and a couple of them were produced and off Broadway, and one called Herman or the Sloth is done all around the world, actually, in community theater and places, and it's a really funny story idea. It's about this woman in Tarzana who wakes up one morning and she's got a tree out in the back with all kinds of leaves and stuff. And there's a sloth in the tree. Mm-hmm. And she says, where did that come from? And then she looks around and she sees all these beer cans on the ground. And she comes to the conclusion that it's her husband, that he's gone transformed to a sloth. And the whole play is about that. It's about her. And I did it as a screenplay too, right, of her trying to, people come down and reporters and the ASPCA because you're treating him wrong and all that sort of thing. And so it's a very funny play, and it's got some really funny stuff in it.
Well, I'm just looking at your website. You screenplay. It's under your screenplay tabs. You got Hot Stuff, and then I also had a play, A Perfect Hatred too. So, tell us about those.
Well, it's interesting. The hot stuff. Let me tell you a little bit about that. I met a gal. Now, this is a real person, and she's a really lovely person. Terry Serio. I heard about her, and was the only woman to ever work in the large machines category. They would do lifting and all kinds of stuff, and she was the only one who could get into the union. And I thought that's a great story idea. So I wrote a book and a screenplay about that. And it's a very very interesting story because it's a woman against the male feeling about everything. And I think that's it would have been a really good and still could be a very good screenplay and a very good film. And so that was something I wrote. Then there was see what else. Oh yes, that. And then what was the other one you mentioned?
You've got this Perfect Hatred.
Oh, Perfect Hatred. That is basically about my wife and her family.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and they were in the 20s and 30s and 40s, and her dad was a really strong character, and I thought, boy, this guy's going to make a great dramatic character, and he did. He was and I wrote this play, and Janie had four sisters, five sisters and three brothers. She comes from a family of 9 kids. And it was a very interesting time and a very interesting relation, the way the relations worked with the family. And the dad was very poetic. He'd walk around bouncing a ball. He'd come up to somebody and say, "You're dead and you don't know it." He was a very spiritually minded guy. He read the Bible all the time. And his wife was kind of a dumpy, sweet little lady. Jane, when she was a young girl, had a very good voice. She was on I think it's called Victor's Ptolemy. It was a group of a big orchestra that moved around the country, playing and everything. And they had a contest for the best female singer, and Jane won. So I worked that into the play. I worked it into where she gets raped by somebody, and her father blames her for it, which was a horrible thing. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of it, she's singing on this song. And what I did with it at the end, the dad, this really strong character, had a fetish about women. He was afraid of them. He was really afraid of women. And he always talked about how there's spiders. They'll come and they'll get you and they'll kill you and blah, blah, blah. So at the end of the play, I have these women, like 7 or 8 women. They hold a thing together and they form a thing behind him. And they move this rope of whatever it is, like it's the jaws of a spider chomping at you. And they close in on him. And just as they close in on him, it blacks out, and he screams. So it's a really powerful, dramatic ending for a play. And he ends up leaving, and everything. But anyway, that's that play. Yeah,
that's a frightening.
And then Jump I'll Catch You is a 2-character play, and that to me, that play has the greatest opening line of any play ever written. Know what it is?
No.
Benny, the guy who is the guy, and then in the first scene you see him. It's a bus. The bus is going along, and the bus stops. And there's a woman sitting in the bus, in the back of the bus. She's looking out the bus and everything. And the bus comes to a stop, and this guy gets on with a bunch of flowers. And the bus starts up again. This is the play now. This is on stage. Mm-hmm. He looks around. There's nobody around anywhere. There are all kinds of seats available. He goes and sits next to Miriam, the girl. She looks at him. She looks around. And she thinks, what's going on here? And she's afraid he's nuts or something. And so she kind of pulls over to the side. And he sits there for a few minutes and he says, "I died once." She said, what? He said, I died once. She says, excuse me. And she gets up to go out. He said, I'm sorry, I already did. I didn't mean to upset you or anything. I'll move. So that's the beginning of it. He says, I died once, and he tells her what happened. He was in a car wreck with his family, and he's got these flowers. And so the scene ends. They have a really cute scene, and he says, I died once, and I was floating. I was floating in the air, and above the operating table. And she said, did you look? And I said, I looked down and I saw this nurse. She said, she was really cute. She had big breasts. And Miriam says, you realize she had big breasts when you were dead? He said, well, I was just dead. So it was really cute. And at the end, you find out that he's going to the cemetery. His wife and his son were killed in the car. And
that's amazing. I mean, that is a great line. I died once.
Yeah, it's great.
That's a great line.
Yeah. And I've had it done a couple of places, and it's really should have been done in New York, but wasn't able to get it done.
Let's talk about your short stories and your books, which people can purchase and obviously read. So you've got some things going on there as well as your plays, screenplays, and
well, I started writing books when I found out that I'd written. Doris was a book first, so I tried to get it published, and one of the publishers. But I started writing books when I found out that in Amazon you could self-publish books. And now what that meant was basically you got to also promote it, learn how to be a publisher. And but that's something that you can learn, and you can get the book published. So I started doing that, and one of the first books I wrote was a book called Onions, which is I think it's my best book, because it's about this young boy who's 12 years old, 13 years old. And he's been in like 20 different homes in the past 2 years. And he just hates everybody. He hates the world. He hates his life. He hates his dad for dying and leaving him with his mother, who was an alcoholic. And the whole story is about this kid, Charles Onions. And so I'll give you a little bit of background on it. He the first thing you see him doing is he's in town, and he's got a skateboard, and he looks down and he sees this woman driving up an old car, like an old Ford car, and pulling up to a street and getting out to put money in the meter. She gets out, and he gets on a skateboard, and he shoots past her and grabs her purse, takes off. Well, she gets back in her car, and she goes over, she stops, she cuts him off at a driveway, and he hits the car, and their whole relationship develops, whereby she is going at that point to fight with this guy who's the mayor, and she wants to try to get him kicked out of office because he's a bad guy. So she gets Onions to work with him on her deal with this guy, and it's very interesting how they develop the relationship. She teaches him how to read, how important reading is. She's got a lot of books at home in her house, and he starts working for her on the Saturday, and every Saturday, and they get to know each other, and she sort of corrals him and gets him to be very fond of books and things. And she was a performer in the circus, and she would play on a horse, playing the trumpet on the horse, upside down. And so she gets him interested in playing the trumpet. So he starts practicing the trumpet, and that's a very important thing in the whole show of how he learns to play the trumpet. And it's a very, very, very important thing at the end of the show.
Is this kind of autobiographical to some degree?
It is in some ways, because I played the trumpet when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. I had a little problem with breathing with asthma, and so they thought that would help me. So when I was about 13 or 14, I started playing, and I really loved it. So I started practicing 4 and 5 hours a day, and I got to be really good. I was the only guy in high school who, when we would sit in music class and the guy would say, "How many hours did you practice?" I'd say 50, 40 or whatever. And and they had a thing in Kansas City. Just let me drop back to Kansas City.
Yeah.
Let me forget where I was. But we dropped back to Kansas City where they would have movies where they would stop the movie and they would have a contest. People could come and sing or act or do a thing, and then they'd give a little kind of a prize. So I started playing around with the trumpet, and I did very well. But anyway, I got started with the trumpet. That's how I got started in theater and showbiz. When I got to New York, I got to Northwestern. I was still practicing. I was going down to 408 509 Wabash, I think it was. Frank Anglin was the teacher, and he was very good. And I got learned a lot about trumpet, but I decided I didn't want to be a trumpeter. I wanted to be a performer. To be a performer was better than being a trumpet player for me, anyway. So anyway, I did that.
Onions would you classify Onions as a book for young adults or?
Yeah, young. Actually, it's been reviewed by a woman who said this book is very unique. It's good for young adults and it's good for people in their 90s, all the way up.
Oh, that's
and
good.
It is. It's very kind of ecumenical. It's kind of not religious in any way, but it's very. The woman who tutors Onions was a performer in the circus, and so she has this setup in the backyard so she can walk along the line up there,
right?
And that becomes an important part of the story. But she does that, and eventually the circus comes to town, and she takes Onions to see it. And the clowns and everybody remember her, and they take her down, and they take her on the stage and at the circus and all that. And it's really exciting. So that's one. I think that's one of my best books. Then I wrote a screenplay called Death Load, which is it's still very strong. It's about a guy whose son is killed in a friendly fire in a foreign war. And so to make up for it, to get revenge, he builds these two trucks, and he's a multi-billionaire. He builds these trucks and puts all kind of firepower in them and sends them across the country, blowing up Air Force bases to get back at revenge for his son being killed. So that's my second book. And then now I'm working on a series called Kicker.
Yes.
And Kicker is, I want to get to that for you.
Is the mic hot right now?
The Waldorf Gridiron Club podcast.
So we've got some changes to talk about.
Very exciting time
Moly.
here at Waldorf University.
We're back, baby.
Hey, we can talk about it.
All right, let's go, boys. A brand new season.
It's a brand new season. This is season 3.
Woo. Troy, it's been a spell.
You made me laugh about that.
I know.
Something we have not had in a very long time.
Yeah, well, the first 4 games, the only one we have is that September 7th with St. Francis at home.
Or you got a little Subaru. Why do you think a couch is going to fit in there? This is ridiculous.
I'm taking the nootropics, so I'm really sharp. Then I deaden it with this.
Good.
Yeah.
Healthy.
Just water.
Yeah. Mostly water.
Yeah.
Some grain.
Put that in the bloopers. We've got 40 guys signed right now, and we'll probably end up, 60, 65, something like that. But
Wonderful. It's great to have 4 city kids on the roster. It really is. And just local kids in general.
he is an analytical dude.
Oh my gosh.
She was like, the guy inside's a little creepy, so you need to go in and get it. And I said, don't call him creepy. There's a Ring camera right there. He's going to hear us.
This is season 3 now.
We're back, baby.
I interviewed 25 people. I didn't get to talk football. I didn't get to go listen to speakers. I didn't get to do as much as I would like to do at a convention.
There's no rules in podcasting.
No, it's your deal. Yeah, we made some adjustments to practice, and the guys, the players are, we were doing boot camp. They were up every single day.
Ready for the kickoff?
It's the return of the Waldorf Gridiron Club podcast, season 3, starting Friday, March 22nd, on your favorite podcast platform.
And forever and always, go Warriors.
I was really worried that you were going to forget that that's how you always signed off.
Actually, I think I nailed it.
Kicker is an NFL guy. He's the star kicker for the New York Giants, and he's got a couple of Super Bowl rings. He's a great street fighter. His name is Frankie Scarmazzino. Frankie Scarmazzino NFL star kicker will entice you, cheer you, entertain you, and charm you with his bubbling personality, sparkling genius, wit, he is a genius, and physical prowess. Wow. All that in one handsome 6'2", high cheekboned, charismatic guy with the body of an Adonis. You've got to read all his books and jump on his ride with him. All of these adventures he takes to realize the scope of his brilliance and immaculate ability to triumph over life's challenges. Trained as a Navy SEAL, he's more than a match for the thug scum he encounters as he negotiates the broken glass terrain that a private eye has to tread. His partner is a great gray wolf from the wilds of New Mexico. And it is. The wolf is really, it's great. It's that he has this wolf as his partner.
So he's a former Navy SEAL who's a pro football kicker and also a private eye.
Right.
I mean, that's it. That's all wrapped up together. What else could you ask for?
Yeah.
And there's two of those books?
I've got, at this point, I got 4 books.
Oh, 4.
1, 2, and 3. The first one is Going the Distance. The second one is Clearing the High Bar.
Okay.
The third one is Closing the Circle. And the fourth one is Man's Best Friend. So I've just finished that.
Oh, wonderful.
Man's Best Friend, I think, is going to be the best book because he rescues 4,000 beagles from certain death from this company that likes to kill them and, use them for perfume and stuff, building stuff like that. And it's called Man's Best Friend. I think it's going to be a really big success. So that's what we're doing right now. We're promoting these 4 books.
Yeah, you can find that on Amazon. Go get your books and check it out. I like those type of books. Now, I haven't read that yet, so I'm going to have to add it to my list of things to read, Si, because I do like those type of books.
Well, you'll like these. Book 4, Man's Best Friend, is based on a true story. They had 5,000 beagles out in a kennels in Long Island, and they're supposedly taking care of them, but they're not taking care of them. Beagles will die in the pens, in the cages, and they don't do anything about it. They don't feed them. They did a horrible thing. And this is true. This company's been around for a long time. And what happened was eventually the Department of Agriculture issued a couple of warnings to them and finally shut them down and took all their dogs and got them homes, which was wonderful, a wonderful idea. That really happened. And then I picked up on that and I used that in my story that Frankie takes care of the 4,000 beagles. And it's really a sweet way. I can't tell you how he does it, but it's really, really great. And it's fun.
That's the 4th.
But anyway,
book.
those are the 4. You got to read them.
That one's not out yet, or the 4th is just released?
No, it's not. The 4th one's not out yet.
Okay. All right. So keep an eye out for that. There's let's talk about your musicals. The Children's Crusade. And
there's a Children's Crusade is a very, very big thing. And I want to talk about Buster Keaton too.
Yeah. Jump back to Buster.
The Children's Crusade was produced at a place at the Oklahoma City Music College, and a number of years ago. It was very successful, and I wrote all the score. The reason it took me so long to write it was because I decided that I wanted to hear it exactly the way I hear it musically, and I couldn't do that unless I scored it myself. I mean, scored it for instruments. So I learned how to score. It took me a couple of years, and I scored it for 12 instruments, and we recorded it, and it's very interesting. But I gave the score and the recording and the script to Sheldon Harnick, the guy I told you about, who wrote the lyrics for Fiddler, and he said, "Si, I really like your Crusade. I think you've done a good job with that." They said, "In your score, I want you to compliment you on 2 songs that are really, the score is incredibly good. And one was In the Coming Battle, and the other one was written by somebody else, and the other one was written by me, which was I Hear Your Laughter." And I said, "Oh, that's great. I wrote that. I wrote the songs for that. Not just the songs, but I wrote the arrangement for it." So that was very encouraging.
I just
And,
love the fact that one of the things that that I try to promote is for people to be useful and to never stop learning. That they can constantly pick up new things. That they should be curious and be interested in life around them and skills and tasks and hobbies or whatever it might be. And you're just a perfect example of that. 92 years old, and you're just like, yeah, I wanted to hear it, so I learned how to score. That took a couple of years, you know. And it's just like, oh yeah, let's just learn how to score a musical. And you know, you were already writing songs. You'd been doing that for quite a while, and writing plays and screenplays and all of this. And
that's right. Yeah, this was something new.
Yeah, I was well. I'm going to go to the next level and score this thing, that's amazing. I got, of course, it probably helped. I mean, you obviously have that musical ability from singing and playing the trumpet and all of those, you know, performances you've been in. You certainly were familiar with it, but you still had to. Still had to learn how to do that, which is
I'm still trying to get it produced, and I'm looking for good ways to do that. And I was interested in the fact that you directed a large production like that.
We did a best Christmas pageant ever back in December with the local community theater here, and actually I talked to my friend Don Johnson about the Children's Crusade, the musical, and shared some of the clips with them that you have on your website. And he was here at my studio, just stopping by to visit one day, and you know the challenge for us, our neck of the woods, is that we're just so far away from you know, where we can collect the dancers and the strong male parts that this show requires, right? You have got a lot of male. I mean, it's about the Crusades. Is this the third historical crusade that takes place in the 1200s or something like that?
It's the third or fourth. Let me just tell you something that I did. I'm very aware of how important those dancers are.
Yeah.
So you know what I did? I called all of the dancing schools in your area. Very few of them have any. One has one male dancer.
Yeah.
So I Googled male dancers, Iowa, and I got a guy who's a professional dancer, and I thought, well, if this guy works out, maybe I could get 10 more. So I just want you to know that, yes, I'm aware of that. That could be a problem, but that is something that can be solved.
Yeah, you can find a way. That's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. But anyway, let me get into Buster Keaton.
Let's talk about Buster.
Buster he played the king. Jennifer was played by Dodie, and I played the son. I played Dauntless the Drab, I was called, and we have a couple of pictures of me with him. And it was a most wonderful experience because I loved him. He was a great guy, and he was such a great performer, and he was so good with people. I mean, he was so generous with his talent, and he would help everybody, anybody. And he just did such great things. But I looked up, I wanted to find out more about him. And so I looked him up on the internet, and he's the greatest stuntman, Troy, that's ever lived. If you ever had a chance, pull up Buster Keaton's stunts. You will be amazed at this guy, what he does. He broke his neck, and he didn't even know it till 2 years later. A doctor said, "How'd you break your neck?" He said, "I don't know."
Really?
Yeah, because he was so. And there's a story to that. And when he was brought up in vaudeville, and he was born in 1895, and so in 1900 he was. It was called the Buster. It wasn't Buster yet. It was Keaton. The Three Keatons it was called. And his mother. The act was very interesting. His mother would play the saxophone, stage left, and Buster and his dad would do the act center stage. And the act, and they did the act and with a big shoes on, clown shoes, and a big ball of wigs and stuff. But the act was Buster, who was only 5 years old, bugging his dad so much that his dad would pick him up, throw him into the furniture and into the wall, or into the orchestra pit, or even into the audience. And so because he did that, and because it was so physical, every town they would go to, the women would get together and they'd call the police and they'd call the authorities because they said, this is child abuse, this is horrible. And so the police would come and they would talk to Joe Keaton, and they would talk to him, and then they would say, come here, kid. And so they would look at Buster. He was like a 5 or 6 year old kid, and he had no broken bone, no skin abrasions. He had no bruises or anything. And so they couldn't do anything to him. So Buster told people later how he did it. He said it was called proper technical execution. He said, you have to learn to fall correctly. He said, and the way he would do it, he would be totally relaxed when he would hit anything. And he said, I would break my fall with a foot or a hand. And in fact, they got so much that was part of the act of him bugging his dad, so his dad would throw him out in the audience, that they sewed a handle into his clothes. So his dad would grab the handle and throw him. I thought that was pretty funny.
You mentioned his lifetime of incredible stunts, but performances. It just was, early silent films, and then all the way into the mid '60s. He died in 1966. But I remember seeing while watching the movie "It's a Mad, 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 Mad World" with my parents, and of course he was in at the end of that movie, and they said, "Oh, Buster Keaton," and then I also watched the film "A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum," which was that was his
he was in that on
last
Broadway.
film, his last commercial film. Was it, and just that was the first show that our community theater did after we had when we brought it back. It had been on a little bit of a respite, so we brought it back in 1998. And A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum was the first show that we did, and I didn't know anything about it, so I had to go watch the movie with Zero Mostel and Buster Keaton and all, and it was great.
Yeah.
And so then I started looking a little bit more into this Buster Keaton character and his life story, and just amazing. And you're saying that he was just a wonderful influence on you in so many ways.
He was a great influence, yeah. And the last song we did in the show was called Boy Flower. It was about me telling him, these things. Then he would pantomime it, and it was so sweet, and it was just a very dear kind of thing. And because it was basically he was being the dad, and he was showing me how in pantomime how boys had the flowers and all that, and he's telling me what life was all about. But he was really great, and he said that, the first time he did a film, Fatty Arbuckle was his friend. Mm-hmm. And Fatty Arbuckle was in New York doing some filming, and he wanted Buster to come by. And so Buster came by, and this guy, the producer, said, well, let me see you do something. And so Buster started acting, and he was so good, the guy hired him on the spot. So Buster said, okay, can I take a camera home with me? And the guy said, yeah. So he took a camera to his hotel. He took it apart, put it back together again, brought it back in the next day. He had such an inquisitive mind. He was incredible at doing stuff like that.
Really?
Oh,
wow.
I got to tell you a story, too. He told me when he was a little kid. He said they were in Kansas. And, there are all kinds of tornadoes there all the time. And he said, we were in a hotel. And I was standing in front of a hotel on the second floor, and the window was open. He said, and this tornado came up and sucked me out of the hotel room and turned me upside down and landed me on my feet outside. I said, you're incredible. He said, no, I was fine. I wasn't hurt. It didn't hurt me at all. So he was just full of stories like that. Oh, I got to tell you a story quickly. He said at the end of the performance, at the end of the tour, actually, I'm talking a little too fast for myself. At the end of the tour, it was in California, and he was the mayor of some little town there, and everybody knew him. And he said, Si, I got a really great looking gal for you. And I said, oh, great. He said, yeah, at the end of the show. So at the end of the show, I was still in costume, and he was still in costume. So he said, come to come to my dressing room. So I went to his dressing room. There's this beautiful, beautiful lady there, and a young gal, probably 23 or 4. And she was beautiful and a dancer, and all that. We were talking and everything. And then Buster said, look. And I said, what? Yeah, I turned around and looked, and she was suddenly in behind me. He said, Si, this is the Earl twins. I said, you dog. They looked exactly alike. It was really amazing. So that was a little trick he played on me. And every time he'd come back to New York after the show was over, he and Eleanor, by the way, Eleanor was a really great gal too. She had been a dancer in silent films. And when they'd come they always stayed on Central Park South in a hotel there. As soon as we go in, I would not say anything to Buster. He wouldn't say anything to me. I'd go and sit down with him, and we start playing a game. We used to play on the road. I forgot what the game was, but it was a funny little game. We just sit there and play the game. We didn't say anything. and every time he'd come back to New York, we do that thing. We do that kind of a routine. And then I was in London. Doing Divorce Me Darling, and I found out that he was in the hospital. So I took a picture of Chuck and I sent it to him. And later Eleanor told me that she showed it to him just before he passed on. I thought, how sweet that was.
I have to ask you about your name. Cy Young is, when you say, hey, I'm going to be talking to Cy Young on the show, the first thing that comes to people's mind is the baseball player. I bet you've never.
That's true on the internet too.
Yeah, I bet you've never heard that before, huh?
I should have changed my name because I've now got to do Cy Young, author and performer. Otherwise, you're going to get Cy Young, the baseball player.
Right.
Yeah. I still think about changing my name for other books. Oh, I wanted to tell you also with the Frankie Scarmazino books.
Yes.
I've done what's called Magnets, which is about 8 or 9 books about Frankie when he was growing up, when he was in nursery school at 4, when he was in 6th grade. I know when he was 6, like all the way up to like when he tries out for the NFL. So, and those are short books, and they're under Magnets. But that's really good because it gives a feeling of how he developed and who he was, and it's a good thing just to know. I'm going to have those they're not in there yet, but we're getting them into the Magnet area, the book. And you can read a book or read one of those books, and all you have to do is just give me your email. I don't have to charge you anything.
The young Frankie Scarmazino. Did I say
young
that name
Frankie
right?
Scarmazino, yeah.
Frankie Scarmazino, yes.
And I based his first book when he was 4 years old on Miss Stiver's school on Central Park West, just above Columbus Circle, for my little guy, Chuck, when he was 4, when he went up there. He went up there and I took a lot from him. I should never tell him this, but he had a lateral lisp, and he came back the first day and he said, Mama, he said, we did today with Miss Stiver. He had the lateral lisp with Miss Stiver's. And Jane said, no, what? He said, we killed cockroaches all day. It was an old building,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got that in the book, and it's so sweet. It's just so sweet.
You have just an amazing catalog of creative endeavors that really spans the whole realm of production, from these plays and musicals and books and young people's books and books for everybody. And
you know what, Troy? Let me just add something to that. When I came back from California, I found out that there was a guy doing animation scripts.
Okay.
And it's called the Silverhawk series. So I contacted him, and I wrote 3 Silverhawk shows, animation scripts, and that was a totally different way of writing,
Mm-hmm.
But that was really interesting. Animation scripts, Silverhawks. I think you can still see them somewhere. So there you go. I did them too.
This has been just such an awesome and epic conversation. There's just a tremendous amount of experiences that you've had, and I bet that we've only just touched the surface. You have got obviously you've got a store on Amazon. People can find your books there. Your website is. You can go there, and that's cyyoungbooks.com, and that's where you can find more information about all the books, short stories, plays, screenplays, the musical that we talked about, and then link to the Amazon store. And you're available on forms of social media as well. But from what I hear, that's not your favorite thing to spend your time on, is the social media stuff.
Yeah, not my thing. I have a gal who handles most of that, Judith.
Wonderful. Cy, I've just so much enjoyed this conversation. I look forward to our future communication. I'd love to read the book for the musical, that the Children's Crusade, and check out. Obviously, I'm going to read some of your books as well, and probably get hooked on them. So I look forward to that. What else do you want to tell the fine people who spend their time listening to The Sunny Side of Life? What advice do you have for them? You are a person with a lifetime of usefulness, and how can they do the
Well,
same
I
thing?
think to me, Troy, the most important thing is your attitude.
Mm-hmm.
The attitude of, I can do anything that I want to do that's good, that's blesses people, that's helpful, and that's going to be something that I'll be proud of. And I think that's so great. I think the mental energy that you have is something you can never give up, and you never say, I can't do it. I can't. Like Henry Ford said, if you think you can do it, you can. If you can't think you can't do it, you can't. So I agree with that. Whatever you think you can do, you can do it. Nothing can stop you. And I think that's the most important thing. And I feel that people can. The whole concept to me of people is for them to understand more about themselves, about how great they are, and not to be put down by anybody, but to be uplifted and uplift others. I think that's the best thing you can do.
Well, thank you so much, Cy, for being
Thank you, Troy.
the part of a sunny side of so many people's life. And thanks for being a part of our show today.
Okay, babe. Well, you're doing a great thing there yourself. So thanks a lot.
I want to thank all our friends and guests for stopping by for this episode of The Sunny Side of Life. All the Sunny Side of Life players who stopped by, creative support provided every day by my incredible wife Heidi and our fantastic 4 boys. Thanks to every one of our listeners. That means you. A big shout out to my brothers and sisters in uniform holding the line around the world. Share the word, folks. Let the people know what we're up to. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, and follow us on social media. All skits are written or adapted and directed by me, Troy Thompson, and are produced here at Sunnyside Farm Studios and delivered to all platforms by Buzzsprout. Music and sound effects are provided by Soundstripe. The Sunny Side of Life is a weekly production about our life on the family farmstead here in Iowa, the liberties we prize, and the pursuits which make us happy. Now, none of this is possible without Christ in our lives. For the Lord God is our sun and our shield. He gives us grace and glory. So may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may the sunny side of your life, liberty and pursuits, be in Christ, and made evident unto you each and every day, and give you peace.